Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Ciara Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Ciara Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 116 with Raquel Lima. She is a veterinarian technician, and we talked about how she got into that career. We talked a little bit about how she liked riding horses, and she owned a couple, and currently owned one, and talked about that experience and how that got her into animals and wanting to help animals and educate people about them. So it was a really great conversation. You could check that out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. As well as if you like to watch your podcast, you can search that on YouTube. Just look up The Carroll Connection or Ciara Carroll, and it should pop up right away for you. I also want to mention I have this episode. I'll have another episode hopefully scheduled the week after like that. And then I'm going to Ireland at the end of the month, so I won't be making content. I will come back and have an episode for my birthday following that. So just so people are aware of that. But for today, episode 117, bringing in another great guest, Ciara Conway.
Hi, how are you? My name's Ciara. I'm 24 years old, and currently I'm an occupational therapy assistant.
Perfect. And glad to have you here. Excited to have you on the podcast.
Me.
It's been a minute since we've seen each other, so we'll dive into everything and how you got into your career as well. So how I like to start my podcast is I like to start with family dynamic. And I always like to kind of explain why for any new listeners out there. And I like to talk about family dynamic because it's like kind of we're talking about your life here. So we're trying to build the foundation, and we're talking about the early days, what your family was like, what your experiences were like, where you're from. And I always think it's important to talk about these things because everyone comes from different backgrounds, different upbringings, and it's always interesting to me. I'm not like a psychology major or anything, but like it's always interesting to see where people come from and how they get to where they are. So I'll kind of let you take the floor with family dynamic. Anything, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, you could go with that. So
Sure. So I grew up in East Providence, where I was living with my mom and dad. I lived there for probably until around like middle school age, and then my parents got a divorce, and I chose to live with my dad. So we moved out, found a house in Seekonk, and then we moved there. So I ended up transferring schools. So I went from East Providence to Seekonk during my sophomore year of high school. And yeah, that's what we did.
Nice. And and obviously you can go into this as much as you want to with like your parents separating. I like to talk about this too. Like, how was that for you? Like, whether it's emotionally, mentally, like, I'm not sure around what age, but like whatever you're comfortable with sharing, obviously you can kind of go into that. I just find that super interesting to hear when their parents have separated, what that was like for them and how they kind of like dealt with that.
Yeah. So it was, cause it happened when I was younger. And they kind of like try to stay together to work it out. But I think because I was so young that I kind of blamed it on myself. So I was like, oh, maybe I wasn't like the perfect child, or maybe I did something wrong. So it was hard on me. And then I grew up and I learned like, sometimes things aren't always my fault, and sometimes people just don't work together well, and that's okay. It was a little bit difficult kind of transferring schools just because like I felt like so many people had those like tight kind of cliques or like bonds from like growing up from so much younger. So I had to kind of like, put myself out there and make new friends and kind of be outgoing and do a lot of things. And that's what got me into soccer is I made a lot of friends playing soccer, and I really enjoy it. I played that since I was little. I played it all throughout high school. I played it in college. I still play now. I play on a Sunday night league. But yeah, it was definitely tough, but I found my ways to kind of deal with how I was feeling, and it's not until like kind of now where I do see like a therapist and everything like that, where I know how to kind of manage like my emotions and how I feel and things like that.
Yeah, well, we can dive into the benefits of therapy too later in the
Yeah.
podcast. I'm always a big advocate for therapy.
Yeah.
I've talked on the platform many times about how I've gone to therapy and the benefits, and I think it's always important when possible to talk about that. And it's always nice when someone like yourself or any other guest has come on that has experienced therapy in some way to talk about their experience, because I think more people could benefit from it. And I think we'd have a little bit healthier society if more people chose to do that. Good relationships with your siblings and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. So I have an older sister, and I'm pretty close with her now. I'm very close with my dad. My dad's my best friend. He's been there through everything. I'm very close with his girlfriend as well. And they have 2 kids of their own. So I have a little brother and a little sister, and I absolutely love them. Like, they are the best thing that's ever happened in my life. They mean the world to me, and I like love watching them grow up. So I try to see them whenever I can, take them out places, just make memories with them, because I want to be present for when they grow up so that they know like I'm always here for them. My sister as well, she has a daughter and a son, and another son from a previous relationship with her fiance. And I love them too. They are so cute and they're awesome.
I knew that you had the younger brother too. I didn't know that you had another younger sister. That's awesome.
Sister, yeah.
Congrats on that.
She has little curly hair. She's so cute.
What's that experience being like now? Being like, obviously we're older in life, and you get to have a younger sibling, and like to kind of go through that experience where you can kind of help raise them a little bit. What's that been like?
Yeah, so it's nice because like I do want kids of my own, but it's nice right now because I can see how hard it is to manage kids and manage a relationship at the same time, and to manage yourself as well. So me going in there and being able to, take the kids out for a day, but then give them back as well.
That's usually everyone's favorite.
As well. It kind of like puts me in a perspective where it's like, okay, like I have a lot going on in my life as well. And like, I need to be in a specific place, mindset to have kids. And I work with kids as well, so I have a lot of experience with it. And it's just not easy all the time. It's not always like, happiness and sprinkles. Like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But it has made me mature a lot more.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have a niece now. My older brother had a baby back in, was it 2020? She's a year now, so 2021, I believe it was. Because it was May. So, yeah, it was 2021. And seeing her for the first time, like I don't have any nieces or nephews besides her, so like it was like such a like meeting her for the first time was like holy shit. Like it made me want kids even more, and like it's nice to give them back, but like it's like such a weird experience, like because like when I was obviously younger and like my brothers were growing up, like I don't look at them as like children and babies and stuff, because I'm also a kid and stuff like that, so you don't look at it like that. But when you're older and you can kind of watch the maturation process, and like you've experienced things, so you've seen things through a different lens, and to watch it, it kind of is eye-opening to see all the hoops that the parents have to jump through, and like what it's like to, like you said, managing the relationship as well. And it's always important to kind of hit on those things, because people might not have a lot of younger children in their lives, don't know that, and then they have kids, and like they say, it takes a village to raise a kid. And I think that's like such a true statement. And I think seeing that now is so important, because I would like to have kids for myself as well. And you can't do it by yourself. Like it takes a lot of people, and like having a good family around you where people can support you. Cause like you can, like there's obviously people who do raise kids on their own, but like you need help at some point. Like it's very hard to just do everything by yourself. So I think that's like an important point to hit. Transition a little bit too, like you mentioned soccer, and the transition from East Providence to Seekonk. Played soccer your whole life, basically?
I played my whole life. It's something that, I lived every day. I would go to practice every day. I would do tournaments every weekend. I played on multiple teams. Yeah, and then when I graduated high school, I was like, I can't give this up. So I played in college, just for a little bit, just, until I got my degree and everything. And then took a little break from it, and I still can't get away from it. So I play in a women's league on Sundays, which is fun.
It's good, though. I mean, it means it had an impact on you and I think sports are a perfect way to, one, make friends, and two, it's exercise. I think it's awesome. And I always like talking about sports or hobbies or stuff like that in the beginning of the podcast, because it's where a lot of people make their first friends, really, is through sports. And it teaches a lot of great life lessons as well. Curious to know maybe some of the life lessons that you've kind of picked up that have translated into your life and maybe even your career.
Yeah. One of the biggest thing is too, which my dad helped me, is you don't give up. You keep trying. So in a game, the first half's not going well. You're not going to sit there and sulk and be upset. You're going to keep trying, because you don't know what the outcome's going to be unless you give it your all. And I always remember him on the sideline. He would come to all my games and be cheering me on. He'd be like, "Go, Ciara, go." And then I would keep going. And I feel even sports is more mental. You need to have that kind of mentality, I would say a positive mentality, because if you go into a game, all right, I'm going to win. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be my best, and I'm going to have fun. The outcome's more likely going to be better. If I come in, I'm oh, I had a long day at school. I'm tired. I'm miserable. I don't want to be here. My game's going to be off. Yeah, and circling back too, I've met some great people playing. I still keep in contact with some of my first friends from soccer. And playing a sport, you guys always have that in common with a good friend,
Yeah, I think that's an important point to hit right there. Yeah. Because a lot of the people I've actually had on this podcast, I played sports with. And I think that's super valuable, because a lot of the lifelong friends that I've made is through sports. And I think it's a perfect talking point, because we learn so many life lessons. And I think what you hit there with just the positive mindset translates perfectly into real life. And I've even seen that in my own life when I'm thinking negatively, or I'm sad, or I'm really in a bad place. That transmits to everything that you're doing around you. People don't want to be around you. You're not going to be putting your best into your work. You're not going to be putting your best into the gym. You're probably going to be eating like shit. You're not going to be sleeping well. That negative mindset will really infiltrate a lot of the things in your life, and that's not healthy. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the cycle of just kind of going through the motions, just trying to get to the next day, not really being grateful. I think gratitude's a great talking point. That's something that I haven't really talked about in a while, now that I think about it. But it's something that gets overlooked on the day-to-day basis, because we're, as human beings, are hardwired to be future thinking, and we want thinking about the future, our career, our future families that we want, things like that we forget to kind of appreciate where we're at and how we got here. And I think sports are a good reminder of that, especially as you go through your seasons. Even I think about it all the time when I see a lot of my guys talk about our football seasons, and the games that we had, some of the bullshit that we would do, and that team atmosphere is always super important to remember. And I think that's where a lot of these great relationships are formed. So I think that was a great talking point, because a lot of people that I've interviewed that haven't done sports, I think there's a clear difference between their mentality versus people who did play sports, because they were able to be in that competitive atmosphere where they could compete with one another and actually form bonds and stuff like that. And I always encourage people to get their kids in sports. Obviously, pretty proactive, understand the sport. Football's probably, as much as I love it, the head injury risk is always up there. Things like hockey is up there. They're great sports, but I think being proactive as future parents, for people to listen to this, is always a good positive thing to put out there as well. With transitioning to kind of CConk, that was I remember the first, at least the first week that kind of you came there, because everyone always knows when someone new comes to school, especially at a smaller school like CConk. So kind of what was going through your head, whether it's maybe the first day, the first week, the month, kind of like that experience of trying to really adjust to a new school? Because you mentioned the cliques and goddamn, the very cliquey school. But like, kind of what was that really like for you mentally? And obviously soccer was a huge benefit to you, and you probably maybe knew a few people through that at some point too.
I was definitely nervous. I get nervous very easily. So yeah, I think it was just more kind of, oh, are they going to like me? Are they going to want to be my friend? You know, oh, who am I going to sit with at lunch? But everyone, because I met the girls from the soccer team beforehand, like preseason, and they were very welcoming. Like, they were so nice to me. Like, they made me feel part of the team already, and I just got there. So they helped me out a lot during the first couple of weeks, like, you know, where my classrooms were, you know, where to sit at lunch and things like that. And I did make some good friends on the team, and I really enjoyed playing for Seekonk. And then I kind of like branched out and, you know, met new people at the school, started hanging out with, you know, different people. But yeah, initially at first I was so scared, but I'm glad I transferred because I made a lot of new friends, new connections, new memories, and all of that.
Yeah, and I always find it interesting just because, like, I never transferred schools or anything like that, and like I always wondered what that experience would have been like. I think you're like, as a kid, you'd be crazy if you never transfer schools to never wonder what that would be like to be the new kid, and like especially in like a high school setting where it's like the relationships have been formed and the cliques and the friend groups are already made. So like, it's always an interesting dynamic to me for when people do transfer over. Kind of going with the flow and the transition. As you kind of approach like your senior year and stuff like that, everyone's favorite talking point and question, college. Kind of curious to know like your reasons behind going. Like, did you think of any other options? Like, what was like the path for you?
So like I would say from high school, like I was always very independent. So I'm like, I have a list of what I want to do, and I'm going to do it. Kind of like the same mindset in soccer. Like, you have to have your stuff laid out and you got to go for it. I always knew I wanted to go to college just because I feel like, you know, there's better opportunities when you do have a degree, in certain circumstances. So originally I planned to go to like a few different colleges and play soccer there. But even like in my financial situation, it was too expensive for me at multiple colleges. So I did not want to go to CCRI, but after thinking like, oh, like right now this is the best option for me because it's more affordable, and it actually has my specific area of focus in one of the programs. So I ended up going to CCRI. I went there. So I have 2 degrees. I have my associates in arts and my associates in science, which is occupational therapy implied. And so I did that, got my degree, and then when I was playing that, I played at CCRI, and I thought it was going to be like, you know, oh, it's a community college, like, oh, like, it's whatever. And it was actually pretty competitive, and I also made some great friends there. I had a lot of fun. Like, it was probably like the best time I've had. And just to be able to continue what I love to do, it was nice. The program I did take in college for OTA, it was very difficult, and through that I met this really good friend where we would study 5 hours a day. I worked throughout college as well. I had a few jobs. One of my jobs, I actually worked at the school in the library, so I would study for exams, work, then study 5 hours after, then go to class after that. So it was hard, but you know, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect point to hit, too, is the fact of just community college. And I've mentioned several times in the podcast, if by chance, if there's people in high school or on the path of graduating listening to the podcast, it's like community college is totally acceptable. And it's honestly, I would highly recommend it, especially if you want to go to college, but you don't know what you want to do, too, because you're going to save money. And you're already building a lot of the credits that you do there, especially for people who don't know what they want to do. You're getting closer towards like an associate. So when you transfer, you could transfer and you're really getting into what you actually want to do. And it gives you a little bit more time too for the people who don't know what they want to do as well. So I think that's a huge benefit is like going to a community college. Because if I went to a community college, I would have saved so much money. Like, because like the first 2 years of actual college and like a 4-year university, it's a fucking joke. Like you're paying extra money. I mean, I guess it's like the freshman and sophomore year where you make the friends and the experience and shit like that. But like, to me, it wasn't worth it. Like I met a lot of cool people, but like I hated the college experience. Like I'm just wasn't for me. And I didn't even go to like a party school. If I did, I probably would have hated it. Yeah. Like I just wanted to like do the school shit and go home. Like that was kind of always my mindset with school. So like never really a fan of it, but like a lot of people do chase the 4-year degree because the school pushes it or their parents push it. And like, it's not always the best choice because I know when I graduated too, and even prior, I've talked to people who graduated before me as well, that community college was looked at as like a joke. Yeah. And like people really hated on that. Did you feel that kind of stigma too as you were looking there?
Because even like my friends who like were already going to like a real college, they were like, oh, like CCRA isn't a good college. Oh, BCC is not a good college. Like, oh, you're not going to learn anything there. And I got the same education as they would. I saved so much money doing it. I had a good time, you know. I still think about like, oh, I didn't get the whole college experience, but like I don't need it. Like I feel like I matured and I grew to who I want to be without needing that. So
yeah, it's not really worth. Yeah, it's not worth the fucking 10 to like probably closer to 30 grand for a lot of people a semester, depending on where you go to school. Like especially if you go out of state, you're fucked. Like straight up. Like I just like I think what you did is probably the better route for most people that they don't realize it because a lot of it's unfortunately pushed in the school systems. I mean, Seacoast was a very college prep school, which is a good thing. But like, I remember feeling like there was really no other options. I chose to, even out of high school, to do military, and obviously it didn't work for myself. I'm glad it didn't work out, but like, it wasn't really even talked about like either trades or like community college or like these other options weren't really presented to a lot of people. And I think that's a disservice. And we're seeing a lot of people go to college and spend a lot of money and end up not even working in the fields that they studied in. And I think that's a sad thing because people are wasting money chasing degrees that they don't really want to do.
And I feel like, you know, being able to save that money from going to a community college helped me kind of get that upper hand on having my own place and paying my own bills and being more independent and not needing anyone because I don't have all of that kind of baggage with me from college and stuff.
Yeah, and that's a fact. Because, I mean, when you're able to, like, also work and you're not spending so much money on school, it's a huge benefit. You're not getting debt. And this, as an accounting finance person, debt's not good. I think most people, especially when they're 18, like 17, 18 years old, don't have a real concept or understanding of like the financials of college and like what this is going to do for them. Yeah. And it's a scary thing because like, I mean, now we have, I forget the total of student debt in this country, but it's obviously an astronomical number. And like people are begging for student debt relief packages and stuff like that. And it's like, it's sad it's even gotten to that place because a lot of people, I mean, some people do choose shitty degrees. I ain't gonna like sit here and say that like every degree is like worth the fucking money that people are spending. But like at the same time, it's unfortunate that people are put in the financial situations that they don't realize until 4 years after school, like, damn, like I'm kind of fucked financially and I have to pay all this back. And people spend their entire lives trying to pay their student loans. Yeah. It's one of the only loans that you can't go bankrupt on. So it follows you forever. And it's unfortunate that that's the way the system is. But like, hopefully that it can change into the future. But I want to kind of transition to, as you went to college and you were working at the same time, were you working in the field that you were studying in as well?
Yes. So I had multiple jobs.
Yeah.
So one was in the library, and then I also did like home care for kids who have disabilities. So I would go on the days that we didn't have class, I would go to my client's house and basically like provide like the OT services without like, the degree or anything like that. So like we would do like fine motor skills or gross motor skills activities, basically like ADL, so activities of daily living. So that could be like, helping the clients get dressed, teaching them how to put one foot into their pants, how to pull it up, how to put their shirt on, brushing their teeth, potty training, and even like based on their goals and what they want to kind of target. It could be social emotional skills, kind of like regulation, like having another kid in the home and just working on play skills, like how to appropriately like play with another peer, or even just cleaning up after playing, like things like that.
Yeah, I think that's super important. As someone who has a brother with autism, my brother's high functioning, and luckily he's graduated high school. He's has 2 jobs currently, so he's active and functioning in society. But as someone who does have a brother like that, I appreciate people like yourself who are willing to go into these careers, because a lot of time when parents have children with disabilities, they don't know how to deal with that. And it's not something that you're taught, especially, I mean, having a kid, period, you're not taught how to have a kid. Like everyone always says, like, you do it this way, that way, but like there's no real way to do it. It's just like you kind of take all the information you can and then you do your best you can with that information. And having a child with disabilities is a whole different task. So I'm kind of curious to like what kind of got you into this field, because obviously it's a very demanding field where you're working closely with children with obvious disabilities, and it could definitely be a stressful environment for someone like yourself coming in, meeting a new family and trying to work with those children.
Yeah. I've always loved helping people. I feel like it makes me feel good inside when I do help someone. And, with my first client, I remember we kind of made like huge strides. So me being in the home, like we went from, nonverbal, not being able to dress, not being able to use the bathroom, to being able to, use some objects to show what they want, or to say like one word or 3 words in a sentence to kind of communicate to what they want, and potty trained and all of that. And it made me feel good because it made me feel important to be in someone's life and to help not only them but the family get to where they want to be, or even just like small progress. I think too many people look at the big picture in life, but like you kind of have to appreciate like even the gratitude thing. Like one thing, like they walked up the whole flight of stairs without having to hold onto the railing. Like that's one positive step, and it's a little step, but it's a step in the right directions, and you kind of have to appreciate those things in order to kind of make it to the big picture, if that makes sense.
No, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you need to, and I even say this too, as just like, I've even stepped into this like content creation space, and like, I remember the one of the first goals that I had when I created this, when I first like dropped the Instagram. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get 1,000 followers by the end of this year, and like all this crazy. I'm still not even at 1,000 followers. It's like, it's so much like whatever you do in life, like when you're pursuing something that you want to do, or it's a passion, or it's a hobby, whatever that is, and you enjoy that and you actually want to pursue it, it has to be day by day. Like you have to have patience with it. It's not like, yes, have the big picture goal. You have to have goals in life. That's obviously important. But it's the small goals that really add on every single day that make the difference. Because if you're just aimlessly pursuing this one giant goal, like I'm going to get 1,000 followers for my example, and you don't have any small steps to get there and like small goals, it's going to feel pretty empty, and like you're going to feel really sad when you don't hit those goals right away. And I think that's something that's really important to hit on too, is like, I think it's a great example of taking, and like literally metaphorically too, taking those baby steps each and every day. Like is super important towards progressing towards what you want in life, because it's not going to just happen like the snap of a finger. It's like it's day by day. I think that's super important with your career as well. I'm curious to know too, with like your whole with the program itself, do you think it like appropriately like helped you, prepared you for some of the stuff that you like kind of deal with in like the real life situations?
Yes, I think it did prepare me. But there's a lot of stuff you have to experience in the field, that you don't get to experience in school. So like when I was in the program too is when COVID happened. So we have like, I believe it was 2 clinical rotations where you do like in person at like a hospital, a school, a nursing home, things like that, where you get a certain amount of hours and things like that. And right when COVID happened is kind of when they closed off everything. So we weren't able to finish our last kind of strides. So everything was like, a little rush. So I had to do like a lot of my own work of educating myself more, because like we had that break where we didn't know if we could go back into hospitals or schools and how long it was going to be. So I took that initiative to, educate myself more, reading books, podcasts on occupational therapy, just more, background and knowledge that I would need. I found my own placements for the school, which I was very lucky and I was able to finish. And I had some great supervisors that taught me a lot. And like even now I'm at a great place where they're willing to teach me. And I've just had some good experiences with it.
Yeah, I think that's like an important thing that I was even hitting on last week with Raquel, is like we were talking about the school stuff that you receive and you learn through like college and stuff, or online classes or whatever it may be, versus actual job experience. And I've said it openly, everything that I've actually learned in my career was on job experience. Like school taught me basic stuff, but everything that I learned was in real life experience. And like school can prepare you and teach you stuff that's important, but until you're actually doing the thing, that's when you learn, because you're going to mess up, you're going to fail, you're going to do things wrong here and there. And when those things happen, those are your learning experiences. And without learning experiences, you don't grow and you don't change. And I think that's where people get frustrated, especially when they go into this whole, we're talking about school and stuff like that. It's like, oh, I don't need this, I don't learn anything. And then they get kind of frustrated with this whole process, but then they don't put themselves in situations to win. I'm curious too, with like what you had to like learn. And I'm also want to like jump a little bit too with like, what are some of like the disabilities that you work with, like some of the kids that they have, like what are some of the disabilities that you've had to work with? And so like having a brother with autism, there were certain things that we had to learn too. It's just like obviously being siblings. So like I just want to know just like some of like maybe like, so obviously it's like a huge spectrum of different disabilities and stuff like out there.
Yeah. So during like the home care and as an occupational therapy assistant, a wide range. Because I did like in school, preschool, and I've done outpatient. And so autism, there's so many levels on the spectrum that a child can be. So you can go from a nonverbal client who uses a device to talk. You could have a very high functioning child who's autistic. Some kids with cerebral palsy, let's say Down syndrome, ADHD, ADD, oppositional defiant disorder, things like that. So
sign language too, right? I think I saw a video of you learning sign language.
So I took sign language in college as well, and since I work with kids continuously, I was like, I want to get more education. I want to be better because I love what I do, and like that's a whole nother subject too. And so yeah, I took another course in ASL, and it's great. So I learned like the basics, numbers, letters, how to have a conversation, colors, and it's nice because I can use it with some of the kids. Like if we're doing like a game and it has colors, I can kind of correlate like, oh, red, the block is red, and kind of get that more interaction with the kid.
Yeah, I think it probably helps too with like the stimulation and stuff like that too, like the movement and stuff with the hands. Even if, so when they're nonverbal too, it might help them like receive it better too. So that makes a lot of sense to hear that.
And like having like a whole visual, like, okay, like it's time to stop. It's time to eat. And
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, so like what, like, is there other stuff that you're like, cause like I know nothing about this field that you like maybe have to like learn and pick up on to like figure out how to navigate this dealing with different disabilities.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing, like even just with kids in general, is to take a step back, be patient. Because I notice a lot of kids, like, a lot of people like aren't patient with kids and like kind of just like dry and cut. Like this is how things have to be. And I think me working with a lot of kids who have disabilities, I have that ability to take a step back and like, okay, so a kid's having a meltdown and you see at the stores, parents are like, no, stop. And it makes it worse. But if you take a step back and you kind of, come in with an easy tone and you say like, what other factors are kind of influencing like this kid to have like a, a breakdown or like get upset. Because once you're able to kind of, say it was over, their lid's not on right. Easy fix. But if you're not patient with that, like it's not going to get fixed. It's going to get blown up and things like that. But yeah, being patient in your career is very important. And then I think, like again, like loving what you do is important because like I love what I do. I love helping and like it makes me better because like I want to do these things. Like I want to get more education in ASL, American Sign Language. Like I want to further my degree and work on like educating myself on like vestibular input and how that affects, kids and their regulation and things like that.
No, I think education too with like learning, especially in the field that you're in, is super important. And like actually caring about what you do is super important because like when you're a parent and like you're inviting someone into your home to help with your children, you will want them to be patient, like actually give a shit about what they're doing because like if they don't, you're gonna want someone else. Like, it's like I can imagine you probably have to treat it as almost like if like they're your own or something like that, or you're related in some aspect, because that's usually how you give a lot more attention to is when you actually care. So I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. And it's very important to kind of like when I go into the homes, I make it a priority to like establish like a rapport with the kid. So like before I go in there and be like, no, this is this, this needs to be fixed, this and this. I want to get to know the kid. I want the kid to enjoy being around me. And when a kid enjoys their company, they're more likely to follow directions, to listen, to be present when you're talking. And I think it's even more important too to have that like family dynamic is important because if say mom's doing one thing and dad's doing the complete opposite, like the kid's going to be confused. So kind of like, educating parents as well to kind of communicate and be on the same page to give better output to their kid.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing what you do because as someone who has a brother on the spectrum, people like you are what helped like my brother graduate school. So it's like, it's super important to me. And like, I knew kind of what you did, but like hearing it, it's like very similar to some of the stuff that he's helped like receive too. And like, he was pretty nonverbal and very early on. And like, he took a lot of leaps because people were willing to sit down and have patience with him and cared about him and helped form positive relationships. And I think that's super important and stuff like this. And it's weird in a time like now where you see all the videos, especially even like teachers and stuff, where it doesn't feel like they care about their students. And like, it's sad to see. Obviously, I can understand like the not being paid enough to deal with it. And obviously some kids are just assholes. Like, it's like, I can understand that. But like, when it comes to like children with disabilities, like it's a whole different ball game. Wondering if like you've ever had to like, in like the school settings, if you ever had to like deal with like bullying and like having to like, whether it's to educate like the kids on it or having to like help them through it, because like that's something you see all across on like social media, or even if you've had training on it, like kind of like what are things that you look for or you're made aware of, or how you kind of walk through that with the students or kids.
Yeah. I have not yet experienced like bullying from, you know, students. I have not.
Which is good. That's good.
I have not
That's good.
witnessed it yet. You know, I do witness some difficulties in like social aspects. So like, you know, when I used to see that, I would kind of intervene and be like, okay, like, what's the problem? Okay, so they say their story, they say their story. So how can we fix this? Okay, let's meet on a mutual ground. But next time, let's do this instead. It's okay if you make a mistake, but you have to realize this hurts so-and-so's feelings, or this wasn't the best option for you to pick, but that's okay because we're going to learn. Things like that.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, it's super valuable, especially I've noticed too, because like, as someone who's dealt with like mental illness stuff in my family with myself, having a brother that was on the spectrum, I've seen a lot of things. I've experienced a lot of things. I was educated at a very early age. So like I saw things very differently than a lot of people. And I think that helps me in a lot of different aspects of my life, where I could, even like if you're walking your day-to-day life and you see someone acting a little bit differently or speaking differently, and like you're not so quickly to judge like, oh, that person is just weird. Like, no, there actually could be something actually wrong there, or there could be, there's a variety of things, and like being aware of all these different scenarios and not being so quick to like write people off in social like situations and like just, oh, they're weird and creepy. Like, no, like they're trying their best, and that could be like in a social anxiety situation where they really can't communicate what they're trying to get across. And you see that a lot, especially now since we're living in a social media era, plus COVID has happened. So I can imagine there's probably been a lot of hurdles since that you've probably had to overcome in your career too, with dealing with a lot of kids, trying to overcome this aspect of, for was it almost 2.5 years that we couldn't really like get close with people. So
and just to backtrack on kind of like, you know, seeing someone be like, oh, like they're talking to themselves outside. People are so quick to be like, oh, like he's crazy. But I actually got certified in mental health for adults, first aid. And in that course, you kind of like watch some videos and like you learn, you get educated on kind of some signs to watch out for. And like one of the videos I remember is the person had schizophrenia, but they haven't been diagnosed before. And it's like an onset of it. And their neighbors kind of noticed that he wasn't being well, like he's not acting how he usually was. And they kind of took a step to have him get checked out. And then he later got diagnosed with schizophrenia. But if not, he would have kind of stayed in that kind of, I believe it's called like psychosis of schizophrenia. And, you know, I feel like a lot of people should be educated more on mental health with adults, because like you see it so much in children too, like they get diagnosed with autism and things like that, but adults get diagnosed with things when they get older as well, and people aren't aware of that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of too, even like probably parents and like older like siblings were probably not even diagnosed, because within the last probably 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, this has become more of a conversation. People are more aware now than they've ever been before. So I think we're progressing in the right direction. The one pushback I always have with like mental health stuff is the over prescription for so many people, because it gets a scary thing. Is like, because I understand too from like a doctor's point of view, you're trying to find the right dosage, you're trying to find what works, what doesn't work, but like you're also dealing with real people, and we're not like test trials. So it's an interesting space, because like I always have, that's like always my biggest like conundrum with like mental health and like the pharmacy industry, because like I've seen where it does help. Like there's medication that helps a lot of people, but there's also a lot of people who don't actually need the medication, get on medication and get worse. So it's like, it's a dangerous game. And I hope as time progresses, because we're still very early in this mental health, like becoming more aware of mental health, that we learn the correct things for different people. And maybe I'm always a big proponent of like alternative medicines, trying to get to Western medicines. hoping that gets introduced a little bit more. And I really hope it does, because I'm a very big advocate for that when I can be. Is there any specific thing left on this topic? 'Cause I do want to get towards like the therapy and the mental health stuff too.
I think we're good.
We can transition to that. I want to talk about like your experience with therapy and kind of like maybe some of the things you've learned. Because I'm a huge, obviously, literally, I have mental health on the thing, so I'm a very big advocate for mental health. So I'm curious to hear your experience.
Yeah. So, I would say recently I went through like a very tough breakup that I did not expect to happen. So it kind of like threw me through a loop. And I did see myself kind of like falling out and not being myself. And I kind of took that initial step, I'm like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I'm like, I want to be myself. So I did started going to therapy, and like I do have an anxiety, and talking about, other alternatives, like I did not want to go on medication. So I found different alternatives that like work for me. Whether it's, before I came here, I was chewing gum to help calm my nerves, or I work out every day. Like that's a very good output for me. That works for me. I take my vitamins every day. That makes me feel better. So then I have a good rest of the day. But yeah, so I went through, I currently still go. I enjoy going, and I did not want to go initially, just because I feel like the whole college thing too, like the stigma of going to therapy, like, oh, people who go to therapy are crazy. People, who go to therapy are unstable, things like that. And I'm like, I don't want to fall into that, but I'm like, you know what? I don't believe that's true. I believe I wanted help. I want to feel better, and having someone who's willing to help me and, give me different input and advice, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And it helps me a lot. I get to, talk about my day, how I feel, what I can do to be better. It doesn't just have to be like, oh, why I'm so upset. Like I talk about my future goals and what I want to do and how I'm going to attain them. So yeah, that's been a big part for me. And even taking that initial step to go to therapy, it opened up more doors for me, because I feel myself. I feel amazing. I'm happy. I started to do things that I normally wouldn't do. So I started to travel by myself. I've been traveling for a little bit. And just branching out little things like kickboxing or yoga, or even hot yoga, trying new restaurants by myself, or like just doing things I wouldn't normally do. Like, I was very hesitant to do the podcast just because I'm nervous. I didn't want to make myself look bad, or like, say something, to like make myself look silly. But, I was like, let me do this for me. Let me, set a goal that I want to come here and, spread awareness to mental health and kind of educate people in ways that I can. And right now, like, I feel great that I've done it. Like I'm here, I'm present, and I feel good.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you came out and actually did do it. Switching the camera for the people that don't see it, but I'll hit on all amazing points with that, and I agree wholeheartedly. Was breaking the stigma, especially I speak heavily on men's mental health because of the stigma is very strong and still is. Like, and I've seen it more and more. The pushback lately is like, it always drives me crazy. Is like we scream mental health, and then someone says they need help, and then we just look and we look the other way. It's like we're not fully there, and the stigma is still there, and people are afraid to address their own problems. And I think that's a huge issue in our society, where people are afraid to be fully vulnerable, because unfortunately humans are dynamic, and some people do weaponize other people's vulnerabilities against them and use it against them. And it's an unfortunate negative thing. And it comes into power dynamics and relationships, and all relationships, whether it's business, family, work, business, family, work and business, the same thing. You know what I'm saying? But like, there is like a psychology to it. And once you're willing to like step into this realm of trying to understand why you do what you do and trying to learn new coping mechanisms, it opens up, like you said, a bunch of new doors. Like, I was going, like, a lot of the time, a lot of the stuff happens with like breakups, family passings, sometimes pet passings, like all these different like traumatic experience, car accidents, or like could be whatever. COVID for some people, like, excuse me, but like so many people have trauma that they haven't addressed, and it's going to prevent them from actually growing as a person. And like you said, just because you go to therapy doesn't mean you're crazy. Like, therapy is for everyone. You don't have to, I've said this so many times, you don't have to have something wrong with you to go to therapy. Mm-hmm. Therapy should be recommended for everyone. And like, if you don't like to do it, then you don't have to do it. Like, I did for about 1.5 years. Part of the reason I stopped was my insurance switched. But like, I literally got to like towards the end with my therapist, and like, it's like we meet, and like, I was doing everything great, and it's like, I don't have anything to talk about. Like, I'm like doing pretty good. Like, I'm doing the stuff that we said that I should be doing. And like, I held myself accountable. It makes you hold yourself accountable, because like, you can't lie. Like, there's no reason to lie here. Like, you're not going to get punished for lying. So it's like, yeah, I did that. Like, that was dumb. But like, it's like, and I loved what my therapist would always say. She was like, if I said something or did something that could be like a toxic behavior, she's like, well, Jared, was that action or behavior, is that moving you closer or further away from your goals? And a lot of times you're like, further away. Like, and like, it actually being willing to admit what you're doing is wrong and addressing it and moving forward, because being self-aware and acknowledging your mistakes, that's where the real change starts. And then you can actually address it and move forward and like grow, like you said. And like, I'm glad that you came out here and you experienced this podcast, and like, I think you've done a fantastic job through this podcast, educating people. Like you were very nervous as soon as I hit record, and then like, here we are, we're like probably getting to wrap up soon. And like, you've hit so many amazing points. And I think one thing that what people, they get nervous about is like, what do I talk about? Or they get nervous, that they're going to make a fool of themselves. And I think part of the thing with, I think therapy helped me was like, just not care. Like, you have to be willing to, like, I think what you said to me in the messages was like, I want to try something new. And I think people are so afraid of trying new things. And I think once more people put themselves out there and like try and care a little bit less about what people think, because the truth is we all care what people think. Like, that's just part of human nature. You can't get rid of that aspect. I mean, I wish we could just get rid of it, but like, we can't. And it's there for a good reason. But caring less is like the definitely like the goal more people should hit. And I think doing a podcast for coming up on 3 years for my listeners who do listen to me like pretty consistently, it's allowed me to form so many new relationships, to strengthen so many relationships. And I'm blessed and grateful that I've been able to do this for this long and hit this episode 117. And here we are, and like reconnecting and having a conversation and hitting depths that I didn't even really know about your life. And like, that's why something like this is super valuable. Like, I did say that we are coming towards like the end of the podcast, and I do want to give you a chance to kind of give your last thoughts. Like, I have that last question for you too, like I mentioned, but is there anything that you want to say, or you can jump off what I was saying too as well? We do have some time. I just want to give you the floor.
I mean, yeah, we can bring up like even continue with mental health. I think it's important too, like kind of a cliche saying is like, you know, you don't want to bleed on people who you love. Because I noticed that I was kind of, you know, before I got therapy, I was kind of shutting myself off to the people I loved as well and who loved me. And going to therapy, it made me, you know, realize like more self-aware and to kind of mature and grow, and to kind of not only just see in myself, but see in others what they also need to work on. And it kind of betters my relationship with other people, because I can see if that's something I want in my life or if it's something I don't want, and I have the choice to choose. And I think it's important to, you know, take that step to try new things, because me experiencing all this new stuff, traveling by myself, like, I've had the best time of my life. And it's fun. I get to kind of grow, make memories with my friends, and I want to continue to do that because it makes me who I am.
I think that's super important. And also, too, an important just point to hit for therapy is it teaches you boundaries.
It does, yeah.
Like, I don't think enough people institute healthy boundaries in their relationships, whether it is with their family, whether it's with siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, your work, significant others. Like, we don't initiate those, and being quicker to identify red flags. Like, you have to identify them. Like, you're not a therapist. You're not there to help and fix someone else. And that's something that I'm working on in my own relationships is you can't save everybody. It's not your job to save anybody. All you have to do is worry about yourself, and that's all you should be worrying about yourself. Care about people, be nice to people, and I think doing those things are helpful and positive and can help move society forward as you're being a nice person. You care about people, be sympathetic. Obviously, I think empathy and sympathy are a little bit different. Empathy requires to understand the situation. Sympathy is at least trying to feel for them and be there for them. But being sympathetic, like caring, nice person, I think those are all positive qualities to have, and having healthy boundaries for yourself and not let people try to take advantage of you. And I think that's a good way to kind of like tie the knot to this conversation. I think it's been really great. I do have one more question for you, which is, what would your advice be for someone who wants to pursue their passion?
I would say, probably to not dim your light for others, because your light that you have is what makes you who you are. And if you're happy doing a career that you want to do, even though you hear people saying, oh, no, you're not going to make this much money, you're not going to have this and that. If that's what makes you happy, it's your life, and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So, shine. Do what you want to do.
I love that. I think it's a great way to wrap up this podcast. I want to say thank you for coming out here and doing this. I think this has been a fantastic podcast, and I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm glad I came.
always welcome to come back. For you guys, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your grandma. Check it out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms, as well as YouTube. If you like to watch your podcasts, search Carroll Connection or Jared Carroll, and I'll pop right up for you. A little caveat too, the end of the month, like I mentioned, going to Ireland, so I won't be recording a little bit. And if anyone wants to be future guests, just hit me up on Instagram, whether it's the Carroll Connection Instagram or my personal or Facebook, or shoot me a text. Till next time, guys. Peace.